Hi there, I'm Melissa Sipka, and this is the Apatros Review. Now in this episode, this is actually my 275th episode for the Apatros Review so far, not including the spectrum of special episodes, and my 125th episode for this year. I'll try to get the last 25 episodes for this year done in December as fast as I can. I didn't exactly leave myself too much room to do it. And in this episode, we take a look at this. Children of the Living Dead. If you've heard of this film, you know what you're in for. And by the way, in Australia, this was originally released as R18, which is basically the Australian version of NC-17 rating in America. But Americans can think of it as NC-18, but it was down-dialed to an MA-15 rating for its re-release. Now, this American direct-to-video zombie film was actually originally premiered in UK on the 11th of June 2001, and in the US on the 9th of October 2001. It was directed by Torre Ramsey, written by Karen Lee Wolf, who produced the film along with John A. Russo. The cinematographer was Bill Hinsman, basically the original Romero zombie, the cemetery zombie. And the only member in the cast that's worthy is Tom Savini, who appears like in the first 10 minutes of the film. First 10 to 15 minutes. Now for the DVD, I will say that the film actually, the DVD, it's a 133, so basically 4x3 full frame, KME standard. English stereo 192 kilobytes, no subtitles. It's about 7 seconds short of the 90-minute mark in PAL, and no supplement. Now, 20 years after it came out, this surprisingly low-budget independent zombie film, shot on a cool $500,000, which was given to producer Karen Lee Wolf by her father as a birthday gift, on the promise that she'd try to make a horror film with the money, has attained a formidable reputation as not only the worst film ever to try to leech on the good name George A. Romero and his landmark Saga of the Dead franchise, but also one of the very worst zombie films ever made. And if you don't know who Karen Lee Wolf is, well, her father is the executive producer of Nightmare on Elm Street. The DVD, Australian DVD actually mentions that right there. You see it? Now, when I first came across this DVD back in 2004, I was thinking, executive producer, I've never seen a film mention that. Usually when a film tries to make a connection with something else, usually it's from the director of, or the producer of, or the writer of. Never executive producer. That was the first. And that's basically what Karen Lee Wolf is. I mean, the daughter of the executive producer on Elm Street. Now, after Karen Lee Wolf got her birthday money, previously she served as executive producer on some film from 1985, and who went on to produce another horror film 3 years after this one, but never went any further than that, thank goodness for that. She hired the fresh from film school rookie director Tom Ramsey, then went on to display the same kind of ruthless micromanaging that has become known as the E.L. James effect, named after the atrocious writer E.L. James, who went on to destroy the film adaptations of the 50 Shades books, resulting in the movies becoming a laughingstock of critics everywhere, ending up one of the worst franchises of all time. I've actually seen all three of the 50 Shades movies. Never read the books. I mean, basically on used DVDs I bought for $1 each from the flea market. As the screenplay was very badly written. Has Karen watched any zombie films in her life? Judging from the script, it looks like she wrote it without bothering to watch a single zombie film from the good old days, or she did but decided to change her formula considerably. I'll give an analysis on that aspect later on. She constantly threatened to fire anyone who bothered to ask a question about the turgid dialogue, or even to work through their scenes to a satisfactory standard. Director Ramsey was forced to hire John A. Russo, the infamous producer of original Night of the Living Dead, who had a couple of years earlier transformed his name from a name of modest prestige of his involvement with Night to practically becoming a money-sapping monster with his atrocious remake of Night of the Living Dead, the 30th anniversary edition, by taking the original footage and shooting new footage edited into the project, and removed some original footage to warp the mythos of the film to bend it out of shape, earning himself the ire of just about every Romero fan out there. An original cinematographer billed the cemetery zombie Hinsman on ridiculous salaries, while Ramsey tried his best to work around these absurd conditions. Tom Savini was hired by Ramsey and actually did his own best to help Ramsey by running interference for him, to prevent Karen from sticking her producer's control hand too far up his ass. But when the film was completed and Karen saw the footage, she flipped and fired Ramsey and brought back the recast to read up the dialogue. They didn't have any money left to reshoot any scenes, and got in her own editor, Louis Schoenbraun, a veteran of editing and directing his fair share of atrocious horror cheapies. Try tracking down a copy of Dr. Chopper, an extremely bad slasher film that Schoenbraun had made, about mad plastic surgeon who rides around a chopper motorcycle and keeps himself going by abducting people and removing their organs for his personal use. Try and track that down if you can. It's pretty bad stuff. To re-edit the film from scratch, basically. The result was promptly labelled a massive misfire by the failure by the horror crowd, who gave the film an epic ass-kicking. And with its ass roller smarting, the film quickly disappeared from the scene and has gone out of print. In fact, aside from the American Artisan Films release, and this was released in Force Video, there's never been any subsequent releases of the film anyway. There was one release of the Children of the Living Dead on a, I remember being in Austria in 2007, seeing actually a American DVD with Children of the Living Dead and the 30th anniversary edition night on the same disc. Kind of interesting. Anyway. As for the story, Children of the Living Dead is essentially another alternate strand to the web of continuity that Night of the Living Dead originally spun. You see, the storyline was splintered by the copyright tussle that saw Romero keep half of the copyright, which was the reason that all of Romero's sequels omitted the word living from the titles. So instead of Dawn of the Living Dead, Day of the Living Dead, you had Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, and so on. Whereas Russo owned the other half of the copyright, which enabled him to man his own line of sequels starting with Return of the Living Dead and its own sequels. And in this film, pretty much after the 1968 outbreak of Chronicle Night was dealt with, a small Pittsburgh town is beset by another zombie outbreak in 1985, which was contained within the town's limits. Only for one of the zombies, an anomaly of the type originally a serial killer and rapist named Abbott Hayes, who was murdered in prison while waiting for his execution, becoming an intelligent zombie. Not a bad idea, to be honest. To survive the hunt and hole up in his late mother's old barn for the next 15 years, building up an army of the undead during that time from the various random people it kills, to the point that when the construction crew arrived to redevelop the town's cemetery into U.S. cars dealership, the bastards, Hayes simply sends out his army of zombies to cancel out the project by attacking the crew. Now, as for the changes to the zombie law that Karen Lee Wolf made, well, they simply don't work. The most egregious change is her belief that zombies don't attack children, which while on one hand it works from an ethical point of view. I mean, personally, when I watch horror films, I don't like it when kids get hurt, unless it's for a very specific context. I mean, the only times I've seen children harm being acceptable was like in John Carpenter's original Assault Precinct 13. You know, the young girl gets shot while asking for ice cream, or of course in Night of the Living Dead with which was, I'll mention in a moment, which was alright. The idea of kids getting hurt in horror films is something I don't like generally, but if done right in the right context, it can be effective. Now, while the changes that Karen Lee Wolf made in this film, the zombies in this film don't attack children, it pretty much completely destroys the sheer menace of the undead and bends the imposing threat way out of shape. In fact, from the original Night of the Living Dead, one of the scariest scenes was the image of the young girl who becomes a zombie and kills the mother of the trowel before starting to munch on her. An image that has burned itself into the minds of many a fan. That's one of the few times when it actually works. Here, the film was too weak to build up any sort of horror by restricting the zombie's appetite to an absurd degree. The other thing is that the infection is inconsistent due to sloppy writing. The movie establishes that a mere bite can change a person into a zombie. Even an already dead person being bitten will turn. But in one scene, Hayes bites the neck of the cemetery operator and locks him into a coffin being lowered into the ground. But when the corpse is dug up the next year, he's still dead without becoming a zombie. How the fuck does that work? Also, I have a problem with the ethics of the construction crew, since their plan to relocate the graves only amounts to digging a trench to rebury the coffins in a mass grave and pour concrete over them to build a showroom over them, which is deeply unethical. Let the dead rest in peace, you wankers. No wonder Hayes wanted to stop them. It is kind of sad when you're actually rooting for an evil zombie to wreak havoc on the humans of the town. If you're planning to watch this, only watch the early parts where Tom Savini goes on a zombie ass kicking spree, since those scenes are pretty decent. Or if you want the other scene, pretty much if you fast forward for the closing credits, there's a very brief scene at the end where a construction worker kills two zombies and robs them. Now, as for the central villain, Abbott Hayes actually makes an imposing threat, despite his somewhat cartoonish way of walking, which tends to make a die-hard zombie fan laugh their head off. And the backstory he's given is just cheesy due to how heavy the locals applied the stench of superstition to his life. I mean, it's basically like the town boogeyman. Now, the climax of the construction crew battling the zombies is plain hilarious. with things like a worker trying to repel zombies by lighting his spray can at them, you know, the old make a flamethrower by lighting a aerosol can, or the idiot who does the crazy thing of tossing lit dynamite sticks out of the safety of his car. So basically you have some yahoo sitting in his car, lighting dynamite, sticks dynamite, tossing them out his window. Only for one of the sticks accidentally fall into the car. His reaction before getting blown up was so eye-wateringly funny, I had to rewind the scene to confirm my eyes weren't playing a prank on me. The result, I was practically dying from laughter for that scene. Now, I can't really effectively gauge the acting since the atrocious editing and pathetic attempt at doing an Italian dubbing job on this tense and massive actors' performances, but I will say they do look halfway reasonable. Even for some of the actors, in particular Sam Nicotero, who plays a former grave robber turned agoraphobic motel owner, Dusty, tend to mug the camera without a clue on how to sell the performances or just straight up don't act at all. The redubbing is partially masked by having the camera pointed away from the actors' mouths on occasion, but I will say this about the editing. When you have a scene where the protagonist is given a cup of coffee, but has his cup refilled thrice, that's 3 times for the uneducated, without him so much as taking a single sip from it, then you know the editor has fucked up big time. Karen Lee Wolf's mismanagement of the project has given her an extremely bad name, and she seems to have disappeared from the movie scene altogether, although she did produce another film in 2004 before she went away. Although having said all that, if Ramsey's work print version, basically his director's cut, ever sees light of day by having a DVD release or even a YouTube upload, I will be one of the first to watch it, as I'm deeply curious as to what kind of good it would be. Something tells me that Tom Ramsey had actually made it passable even as a whole zombie film until Karen botched it all up. So if the original version does come out, I'll be one of the first to get it. Can't be worse than this version. Now, as it stands, the current version, Children of the Living Dead, has effortlessly earned itself a D-, 1 out of 10. It's an atrocious film that completely messes the Romero canon and has almost no fans out there. I've never met anyone who claims to be a fan of this film. Utter zombie crap that a bad movie masochist would have a field day with. Now for gore nudity, there's some gore, although it's limited to deep bite wounds and gunshots blowing small holes in zombie heads. No nudity scene. Now for the DVD. As you can see, the Australian DVD, which this is, was from Force Entertainment, which was originally known as Force Video, and which had a reputation in the cowboy days at the beginning of the DVD era in the late 1990s for their mediocre quality DVDs. Although they were the only label putting out horror cult classics in a semi-professional manner. This was originally released with an R18 rating, which basically the Australian version of the American NC-17 or the British 18 certificate. Americans pretty much think of this as an NC-18, which was downgraded to an MA-15, as you can see there, which is basically like the Australian version of the American R rating, which makes sense since this film is nowhere near graphic enough to justify the R18 rating. MA-15 rating makes for the right choice. The quality is almost excellent over the color palette. There is a bluish tinge to the early scenes. I should mention that during production, the film crew actually loaded a roll of film backwards, and they pretty much they wasted a lot of, on whole days of shooting wasted. So I should mention that bluish tinge it looks whacked at times, and the sound is just the original English stereo. There are no subtitles and no supplemental features. Okay, that's that one for Children of the Living Dead. So if you're a bad movie masochist, this is definitely one to track down. You'll laugh your ass off at this, believe me. Now I do not do requests, but by this is from D- 1 out of 10. It's terrible. Now I do not do requests, but if you want to know if a particular film in my collection, just hit me up in the comment section. I'll be happy to answer. And I will do quite a few zombie films next year as well, hopefully. Got plenty of more films coming up. And so in December I'm going to be trying to get through the last 25 episodes as fast as I can. Okay. Hope you guys are staying safe. We pretty much got the Omicron version of coronavirus coming in Australia. Yeah, Transformers Corona. I wonder what all the vaccinated people are going to think about that one. Decepticon Corona, pretty much. I hope you guys are staying safe. Take it easy. That's it for this review. See ya.